The Birth Circle podcast features experts in all the nuanced areas of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, with the aim of helping women make the choices that will keep them safe, healthy, and empowered. We respect all birth choices and believe in supporting informed consent and evidence-based practices. Nothing said on this podcast should be taken as medical advice. You should always seek the advice of a competent professional for your care. Welcome to the Birth Circle podcast.
This is Sarah with Birth Circle, and today I'm so excited. I have Tracy Donegan with me, and Tracy is the founder of the GentleBirth app. Thanks for being with me here, Tracy.
Thanks for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to chatting.
So we're going to talk about how the GentleBirth app is innovating childbirth education, and there's a lot to talk about. But first of all, I want to acknowledge that we're just going to enjoy this next episode while we listen to Tracy's beautiful accent. Teach us all about. You're from Ireland, right?
Indeed, yeah. I grew up in Ireland, and we've traveled all over the world, but we've settled back here in the US.
Awesome. Okay, so tell me, how did you get involved in the birth world?
Well, I think like most of us who find ourselves coming down this pathway, I had my first little boy who's now towering over me 17 years ago with the amazing help of a birth doula. And yeah, that just kind of set me on the path. I was involved in technology really before that. And it really kind of got me thinking about, meaningful work and finding really what your passion is. And although I enjoyed what I was doing at the time, it wasn't something, I wasn't jumping out of bed in the morning excited the way I am now. So we had an opportunity to move to Singapore when my little boy Jack was 9 months old. And I connected with some doulas, and it just kind of went from there. And I started the first doula service in Ireland. We went back to Ireland after a few years. So that was, and it's still growing in Ireland. It's kind of a mixed bag. We have some hospitals that are incredibly welcoming, but there's still a little bit of suspicion about what our role is. So I'm a DONA birth doula and doula trainer as well now.
Very cool. Wow. Cool. Okay. So how did you get the idea for the app?
So I started off as a birth doula. And I got to a point in my work where I really wanted to focus on the evidence and how could we help women have the most positive birth experience possible as they define it. So I had been teaching another program that focused very much on hypnosis for birth. And that really I was bitten by the bug of the mind-body connection. So I taught that program for a while, but I felt it was missing a little bit. And then when I did my midwifery training, we did so much on the physiology of birth, on the hormones, how the maternal system changes, how the baby grows, but we did nothing on how the maternal brain changes in pregnancy.
Ooh.
And how those changes can make such a difference in how a person experiences pregnancy, her moods and birth, and the postpartum. So that was I was being more drawn to the neuroscience part of it, of what's actually going on in here, because I understand what's happening in the pelvis, but tell me what's going on up here, because it's what's going on up here is what's driving everything else. So we need to have a better understanding of what's actually going on between our two ears.
Wow. And so, yeah, if you want to tell us more about that, I've been fascinated too. It's, we say mom's bathed in hormones, mom's bathed in, but what are those and what's going on and how do they affect bonding?
So it's not even just bonding. So we know over the last about 10 years, we're looking at the new science of what's happening in the brain. And we know that due to those hormones of pregnancy, that the brain is extra plastic. So, and we know that mom's brain is changing to bond with her baby. So there's certain parts of the brain that are becoming kind of more wired together. But there's also parts of the brain that, based on stress and depression and fear can kind of upset that wiring a little bit and cause more problems for moms. So the brain is changing anyway. So why not optimize this time of massive change in that parent's brain to prepare for a positive birth experience as she defines it?
That's a great point. Yeah. Okay. So how does the app work?
So it's a combination of, I went and took, I guess, the best of what was happening out there in the world of brain science and the science around birth and physiology. But I wanted to make this program that would encompass the traditional childbirth education. So if you come to a GentleBirth class, you learn all about the physiology of birth, you learn comfort measures, but you'll also spend a lot of time learning about your brain and actually how to use it to the best of your advantage. So it's like a muscle that we're training. So another kind of our slogan is it's brain training for birth. So we combined hypnobirthing. So there's a hypnosis for birth element of it. There's a incredible focus on a mindful approach to pregnancy, because I see you've already had some guests on the show talking about the incredible benefits of having a meditation practice and even short meditation practice. We know that we can change the brain in as little as a few minutes practice a day over a couple of weeks. So this is not something we are going to burden parents with, that they have to sit down and lock themselves in a darkened room for an hour and chant. I wanted to make sure that we were I wanted to bring meditation down from the mountaintop and bring it into the mall and bring it into the main street, so that the average woman on the street who probably has very probably not great ideas about what meditation is, that we could make it really accessible for a much wider audience and for the birth partner as well. So I brought the mindfulness aspect into it, and again, all the science backed it up. It was improving mood, it was reducing depression, it was changing pain perception. So that was another big part of it. And then as I was teaching these classes, I really wanted to engage with the birth partners a lot more. And specifically, I felt that the birth partners, specifically the dads, the male partners, had been sidelined for a long time. That they were, invited along to the first couple of appointments, the scan where, we're finding out the sex of the baby, the fun stuff. But then it was like they weren't expected to be involved for much more than that. And when I was teaching in Ireland, and I would be joking with the dads, and we'd talk a lot in GentleBirth about building their labor toolkit. So I want to, build you a really robust toolkit, and part of that is the mental aspect of it, as well as all of the physical comfort measures. But so there's a saying like in Ireland where the dads would joke to me saying, yeah, I want to understand what are the tools that I can use on the day. I don't want to feel like a tool. I don't want to feel helpless sitting in the corner wondering how I can best support my partner. So what I did was I brought in sports psychology, which just changed everything. So we had the partners were coming in, and they had their own ideas of what they expected this gentle birth to be about. And I would usually do a little bit of what we call like a wind up at the beginning, just to play on their expectations that we were all going to sit around in a circle and hold hands and chant and help them get in touch with their inner child.
Okay.
And so I would see them kind of, the deer in the headlight look when we would start that. And then once we moved into the brain science, and once we started into the sports psychology of what is it that elite athletes do on a regular basis to prepare for the event of a lifetime, which is what they're walking into.
Yeah.
So understanding and it really gave them an opportunity we were speaking their language. They got it. They started to understand, oh yeah, like when, my favorite soccer player does this. And I mean, when we look at, Muhammad Ali, like one of his most famous, affirmations was, how amazing he was, that I am the greatest. So so the dads really started to come along and see how important their role is on the day to facilitate the best birth possible. And, it was, mom, we want you to get in the zone and stay there. And the partner's job was everything else.
Mm-hmm. And giving them the tools to know, like, what they're running, what they're in charge of protecting and providing, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And understanding kind of, it's about controlling the controllables, and that's a big part of sports psychology.
Controlling the controllables.
Yeah, there's when you're walking into the birth room, you can prepare with every tool in your toolkit. You can be, as fit as a fiddle, and every so often something might come up out of left field that nobody could have predicted. So if your attitude has a little bit of flexibility of, there's only so much I can control in this. I cannot necessarily control what my blood pressure is going to do on the day, what my baby might do on the day. I have to be able to be okay with that and control what I can control. So for some parents, controlling the controllables means I'm going to seek out a care provider that will support me in the kind of birth that I would like to have. That might be, changing hospitals, hiring a doula, whatever that is for them. But understanding that there are aspects that they have to be able to accept.
Yeah.
And part of the mindfulness training is, because, one of the really kind of, I guess, moments that really stuck with me around the GentleBirth approach was that I was in Brazil, and I'm sure you're familiar with, how the Brazilian birth culture, it is improving, but it's very, very difficult, and cesarean birth is very much encouraged. And parents who try to have a physiological birth are often, they are victims of obstetric violence. They can be separated from their partner. It can be really difficult for them. So I was in Brazil a couple of years ago, and I was training a group of 50 new educators to teach this approach in Brazil. And we got into a discussion about, well, what happens if I'm with my partner and they tell me I have to get on the bed, and because pain relief is not readily available, but I have to get on the bed. And so my response was, as it would be here in the US and in Europe, would be, well, what if he said no? And thinking that, okay, well, if I said no, then we have to talk about consent. But in some parts of Brazil, it's just not respected. So the fear for those parents was, oh, but they won't hurt me, but they will hurt my baby.
Oh my gosh.
So that was a moment of, okay, so there's elements of this that will work really well in those kinds of environments. And where I saw GentleBirth really, and that mental practice and that building of emotional resilience, because you can read every book on the planet and just say, I'm emotionally resilient, but without the actual training of the brain, it doesn't happen. We are building that emotional resilience and that fortitude and that emotional regulation throughout the pregnancy. So for me to have an understanding that, okay, so...
Yeah, so what does emotional resilience look like in the birth space?
Yeah, so for some of these parents, it was very obvious that they were walking into a combat zone and would not have a lot of control over anything that was happening, but they always would have control over how they responded to what was unfolding. And unfortunately, in some cases, that was not a positive experience. So to help these parents develop these skills of mental resilience and emotional regulation so that they can stay focused, they can stay as calm as possible. What I began to see, and I spoke to some parents this week about this here in the US, was that even parents here in the US who have experienced on paper that might look like really significant birth trauma, what they found was that emotional regulation, that they could see, yes, I see what's happening. This is not what I wanted. But they were able to emotionally bounce back from that experience so much quicker because, again, they had been training their brain and they had a flexibility and they were in such a better place then after the birth to be able to take further steps if needed.
Yeah,
and because we talk about the brain, and every childbirth educator knows about that that framework, the brain framework. So if you are trying to make an important decision in labor, and we look at, B or AIN, and what are the benefits, what are the risks, alternatives, what's your intuition tell you, and what if we did nothing, what if we waited a little bit? But to be able to have the focus to actually have that conversation, you have to be able to settle your brain first.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even take on board that information. When you're in a stressed response, the executive functioning is offline. So part of the partner's response in if something like this is happening is, okay, so we need a moment here so that we can get both of our kind of executive function back online so we can take in the information you're about to give us so that we can make a decision from a place of intention and a place of focus and not a place of fear, because we don't make good decisions when we are stressed.
Yeah.
They're not intuitive.
No, we don't. And that's a pre-birth training too, to get the partner on board. I've seen three things happen. I've seen both partners not know what they're doing, and the whole thing is like a chicken running around with their head cut off. No emotional regulation, like what you're saying. Or the birthing person has made all of the preparations and is in Zen, but the partner is running around with their head cut off. And then the third way is that they've both done the preparation, and the partner is able to be there and hold space, stand up for and advocate for what the birthing person, and if they've agreed together, what are our priorities? Our priorities are this. What happens if this wrench gets thrown on our way? Then the partner can stand up. And don't you think they can buffer? The partner's like such a big part of that emotional regulation,
Absolutely.
right?
They are, yeah.
Yeah, it's even more difficult to be emotionally regulated if your partner is flipping like a fish in the corner of the room.
Yeah, because as women, we tend to be we're the carers. So if that birthing person is really focused and in the zone, and the partner is freaking out, you can't possibly stay in that centered place because you're worried about, well, are they okay? So we're really clear with the partners that this is the role of a lifetime, and sometimes it's a conversation that they have to have together about, is your partner the best person to be there with you on the day? So there's
that's a tough conversation.
But sometimes it's a necessary conversation.
Yeah,
and I know I've been dealing with their own stress.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. I've been at a birth where the dad said, I will absolutely not be at the birth. I'll get queasy. I don't want to be there. There's nothing you can do to make me be there. And, but when it came down to it, and she was pushing and he was about ready to head out, I, as the filmmaker, I'm in the back of the room, not an active part of the actual birth. And I said, hey, no, come here, sit next to me, watch it through the camera. I said, if I just hold it and you watch it through the camera, it's like watching TV. It won't be like a real thing. For some reason, he thought that sounded like a good idea. So he sat next to me and watched, and like about 10 seconds later, he left me and went up by his partner and stayed by her the whole time. But it was just, he didn't even know what it would feel like. And his response was just to get hightail out of there.
Yeah.
When all he needed to, he just needed to be acknowledged that this was kind of not his cup of tea. And that,
absolutely.
Even watching it through the buffer of my screen made it so that he could like involve himself in the story. So I thought that was cool. But it would have been nice to have that conversation beforehand and have maybe the birth educator help him work through that stuff before the actual birth day, right?
Yeah, and it's about keeping an open mind to even the most focused partner who has, I'm going to be there. I know my role is that. Again, this is especially for first-time parents. It's such an unknown, and sometimes even like just the heat in the room can just and
if they don't want to be involved, if they said, "Oh, I could do this," but when push comes to shove and they're losing it in the birth space, there's the respect of saying, "We get it. You can bow out for a minute. We've got the You've got a
And
great
it's
birth
a
provider.
great reason for having a doula with you,
Yes.
because they can, if they really need to leave, that they can go and they know their partner is being really well supported
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
But yeah, so the partners they've been sidelined for way too long. So giving them a really important role and helping them acknowledge the importance of it, coming into that birth space and the postpartum then was really important for me. So I found the sports psychology aspect really helpful for them. And then so in the app itself, so the parent can start the app as soon as they're pregnant, or no matter where they are, if they want to get to a point where they're really enjoying their pregnancy more and stressing a lot less and sleeping better. When they put in their guest date or their due date, the training that they're getting every day is based on what that date is. So their journey is unique to them and their circumstances. So if we have a mom who is planning a VBAC, her kind of brain training is focused on having a positive VBAC. But it's also inclusive of all birth experiences. So there is hypnobirthing content and mindfulness content for parents who know they're going to have a planned cesarean. So they are dealing with stresses of pregnancy as well, and they want to kind of rewire their brain to be in a good space when they have that surgery and they meet their baby. And they want to stack the odds in their favor of this going as well as possible and stepping into postpartum feeling really well in themselves, no matter how the actual birth experience itself has gone. So every day they will, like, let's say for today, if you were starting off early in pregnancy, we don't overload you with, here's your homework for today, and you've got like 6 hours of reading and audio to listen to. It's very light because I want them to be able to incorporate these practices into their lives very easily. So it starts off very light, and then as we're kind of getting through into the third trimester, they're going to have more content. But the content is usually a hypnobirthing session, which they'll usually do at nighttime, which will be great if they're doing the multiple visits to the bathroom and trying to get back to sleep. They'll do some affirmations and usually a short meditation and breathing techniques as well. So they're practicing the breathing. And then right when we're coming into that third trimester, the last few weeks, we now introduce the concept of a meditation around the expectations of newborn sleep, which I think is a huge issue in the developed world about the expectations that new parents have around how their baby is going to sleep, and the unrealistic expectations that many have. So they can come into that experience with a little more self-compassion for themselves, that this is a tough season that we're in, and kindness towards themselves, and just more acceptance that this too shall pass. That we tend to get trapped in that this is terrible right now, and you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, especially in those first postpartum weeks. So for me, that the postpartum is a really big part of it, because so many different programs and approaches, they want to get you through the birth, let's get you through labor. Like, yeah, but the real work begins after the baby arrives. And when you think about the skills and the what parents are teaching in classes, or what they're learning, I mean, the double hip squeeze is an incredible skill to know. I teach every partner the double hip squeeze. It's because it feels amazing, and it can be really helpful for a parent in labor. But it's not going to help you at 4 a.m. when you're trying to latch on that newborn, and the baby is getting more agitated, and you're getting more agitated, and your self-talk is starting to go off the rails a little. And when we believe everything we think, that's where the problems come in. It's not the thoughts themselves; it's when we believe them that we run into trouble.
I've heard
I'm
I'm not responsible for the first thought that comes into my head, but I am for the second.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you just don't believe those first thoughts, because they come up, and you may have had an amazing birth, and then, like you said, 4 a.m. in the middle of the night, can't get that silly baby to latch.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like,
yeah, and you're
what
tired.
Is wrong with me? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because our self-talk is rarely kind.
No,
so we have to start, and it is a difficult practice, I think, for a lot of women to practice self-compassion and self-kindness, and especially then as a new parent, that they're looking at, well, everyone else seems to be able to get their stuff together.
Yeah.
And why
everybody always looks like they have their stuff together.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this app and the habits that are developed in prenatally as they go through the experience of this app will help them postnatally as well, just by developing those. I mean, that emotional regulation doesn't just fizzle away. You don't lose that skill when you become a new mom.
No, exactly. We want them to be as emotionally resilient for that, especially for that postpartum. But with a 17-year-old upstairs, my emotional resilience gets practiced every day. So there are multiple opportunities to practice.
They didn't warn us about this when at the baby shower, and they were like wrapping toilet paper around our tummies, and we were eating cute snacks. They did not warn us about what happens when they turn 11. In my case, my daughter 11, son 13. What the heck?
So I talk about this. These are, yes, absolutely. These are incredible skills for enjoying the pregnancy more, but it's
you use
life.
you use your hypnobirthing breathing while dealing with your 17-year-old.
Absolutely. And yes, coming from a place of acceptance. And I have to say, even around, because there's this misperception that if you practice meditation, that you're just all zen and it's all rainbows and kittens and
it's sparkly unicorn fairy cupcakes.
Yeah, and that you empty your mind and you're just in the state of nirvana. I'm like, I haven't seen it yet. But what it does help me to do is it helps me, what I describe it as, it helps me be a nosy neighbor about what's going on up here. Because a lot of what's going on up here is really not good stuff. And I want to just catch myself before I go off down, on a train of thought that's just going to cause me stress.
I love that. So meditation for you is a way to get all those voices under control. So it's not about making everybody silent and going to nirvana. It's about looking at those self-talk voices in your head more critically, more just...
Yeah, and not even critically. It's more about it's acknowledging that, there's a lot of different voices up here, and a lot of them are not helpful in the day-to-day, running of a business and raising a family. So it's not about being critical. It's about, I always say, it's about putting out the welcome mat for whatever's there.
Yeah.
Because when we're critical and we push against it and say, I will catch myself, and it's like, here comes anger. Good to see you again. What has it been? 4 hours? Okay, let's do this.
It's nice to see you again.
Whatever that emotion is, that they're all welcome, that there's no bad emotions, that I'm going to have this experience. But when you catch it in the early stages, and it's like, because we all know it's happening. You've got that little rumbling of dissatisfaction or annoyance when your partner does something, whatever that is. And later on in the day, then it turns into this explosion, and it's like totally like, where did that come from? Because it's not about the towel on the floor. It's about this little kind of rumbling that I've just let grow. And there's a wonderful meditation teacher, Rabina Curtin, and she talks about it like, when you're driving your car and you notice that the steering wheel is pulling to the right a little bit when you're on the way back from the supermarket, and you just keep ignoring it, and you ignore it until the wheels fall off. Well, then you're really in trouble. But if you pay attention when that starts to veer off a little, then it's like,
are you comparing my emotions to the wheels falling off my cart?
Yeah, or the rumble strips on the freeway.
Yeah.
When we boom 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 on those rumble strips, that's a message to us like, oh hey, there's something going on here you might want to pay attention to. So it's about, can we just pay attention to this and see that those voices that are saying I'm a bad mom, or my baby doesn't like me, or this I'm never going to be any good at this, that we have to be able to say, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe that's not really true.
Yeah.
But to be able to hear it out and then go on with our day, because the more we push against it, it's like, yeah, don't think about a pink elephant and that's all you can think about. The more we push against it, the more it's going to stay in our experience.
That's true. So does your program then involve any hypnosis along with the meditation?
Yeah, so it's the main kind of psychological tools that we use is, so we've got the hypnosis aspects of it, the meditation. The hypnosis would be longer sessions, because these are sessions that parents would use at the end of the day or the weekend when they have time to just sit and rest. And when I'm teaching parents and I talk to them, I say, like, hypnobirthing is so easy, because you pull up your hypnobirthing session for today, and it might be empowered birth. You hit play and you can kind of drift off and just let it happen, enjoy that relaxation. But with the meditation session, which usually they'll do that earlier on in the day, it might be just a 10-minute meditation that we put you to work with the meditation. It might be 10 minutes, but when your mind wanders, we're acknowledging, my brain is like a golden retriever puppy today. So it's gone in a million different directions. So now I'm just going to gently acknowledge, hey, actually I'm in the supermarket now, going through my shopping list. Let's just bring it back. And we just bring it back and we keep bringing it back. So it is exercising the muscle of focus. And for anyone who is planning an unmedicated birth, this is a training that you really, really need, because trying to pull it out of the bag on the day.
Oh, it's really difficult.
If it's a long labor, because you've got so many things kind of stacked against you to really maintain that focus.
So would there be use for this for a mom who's planning a medicated birth?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have, again, my approach is that I want this program to be as inclusive as possible. So there is a really lovely hypnobirthing session for that parent who is just waiting to get their epidural, because they're probably at a point where, and depending on the circumstances, where they can be quite distressed and they need something just to help them settle a little bit while the actual procedure is being done. And then there's another session for after they've had the epidural, which keeps them really connected with their baby and the labor itself, and some really lovely imagery that will help them with those shakes that some moms get, or the perception of a coolness moving over their body, because a lot of parents will also get a temperature in labor, so with an epidural. So it was, how can we again make these tools available to everyone, no matter what their experience is going to be. And there's even one for an induction of labor. So no matter what our opinions are on induction, they're happening. And for what I found over the years was, in some of the other programs that have a very prescriptive approach, let's say a mom was really had her heart set on an unmedicated vaginal birth, and that is all she has been thinking about. And something comes up in her pregnancy that necessitates, for a medical reason, that a cesarean is actually going to be necessary, or an induction of labor makes absolute sense. These moms felt like they were kind of left in the wind. They had been practicing this one approach, and now they were supposed to go into their induction or their cesarean with the same materials that talked about having this beautiful physiological birth, and they felt really duped and really upset that they didn't have more materials to support their individual needs on the day. So that was really a big part of making sure that we have as many tools as possible for every kind of scenario that a parent can experience in her pregnancy and into the postpartum too.
That is really, really cool. So what do you consider the most innovative part about the app? What is doing what's the special sauce?
Well, I mean, there's I guess one of our little special sauce in the app is the labor companion. So, and even though I'm a midwife, I do quite a lot of birth doula work. And for any of your birth doulas and midwives that are listening in, this is a track you might want to have yourself on your phone. When you get to a point in labor where the mom just needs that voice in her ear being loud, like the voice in her ear being louder, like louder
than the transition voice.
Yeah, louder than the voice in her head that's saying she can't do it.
We call that the transition voice, right?
Yeah. So the birth companion is it's an audio recording that is not, it's not hypnobirthing, it's not meditation, but it is talking her through those sensations and telling her how strong she is, and you're doing it. Breathe and just reminding her step by step that she is doing it. And so many parents will contact me saying, you said exactly the right thing at the right moment, and it's so for them. And especially when you have, if it's been a long labor and you have a doula that's quite tired or a partner that's quite tired, that oftentimes the moms will they want their headphones on, the labor companion playing, and they just get in that really focused state, and everyone just stands back and watches. So that for me is just, everyone who uses the app in labor will say labor companion was amazing. But I think the overall, there is no other app like this out there.
Yeah. So is this this also pairs with the whole education? So it's not just an app, but it's a childbirth education series, but they can bring their own flavor to it. Is that what I'm understanding?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's why it supports any kind of birth preparation that they're doing. So I would say if you're taking, and of course, we're limited at the moment with kind of in-person classes, but wherever you're getting your childbirth education, whether it's from a hospital or whether it's, online or whatever program that you're working with, there really is nothing out there that does what GentleBirth does, that focuses really well on the emotional preparation and the mental preparation for birth. But I wanted to show you, this is the GentleBirth book that's in the app itself.
Okay, so yeah, for those that are just listening, not watching the video, so you can find this at Amazon?
It's in Amazon, but they can also download it. It's freely available in the app. Even if they're only doing the trial, there's a 7-day trial where they can get to, kick the tires a little bit, take it for a test drive, see if they feel like it resonates with them. And then they can download the book for themselves. And then there's also a kind of companion workbook with exercises that they'll do with their partner, again, to kind of sit together and look at, okay, what are our priorities around this birth? And a lot of helping them understand a little more about the new science of pain perception. So that's something that we're really focused on as well.
Talk a little bit more about pain perception. That's a really interesting concept.
Oh, my favorite topic. I guess there's so much new science now around understanding pain and how we perceive pain, and getting to an understanding that pain is an output of the brain. So there is no pain until the brain decides there is pain. And there's different ways that the brain interprets whether these sensations that are coming from the uterus or the lower back or that part of the body, are they something that we need to be really worried about? And if they're something we need to be worried about, then we want to amplify them. And if it's something that we don't need to be worried about, then can we actually reduce them a little bit? So there's a perception in so much of the childbirth education of today that, there are pain receptors and we need to, figure out how to block these pain receptors, but there's no pain receptors in the body. There are different kinds of receptors. So there are thermal receptors that have that pick up heat or cold. There are pressure receptors. There are stretch receptors. So when those signals reach the brain has an opportunity then. And there's kind of psychological factors that influence how the brain is going to interpret that, like the meaning of the pain. So for a birthing person that is going into her birth experience thinking, I know it's going to be hard work, but I know that every single one of those sensations is bringing me closer to my baby, that this is a positive pain. And it means, and the more painful it gets, the more progress I'm making. So the more pressure I feel. So that's part of the prenatal training is helping the brain properly process
the sensations it's feeling.
Helping them understand and understanding that, as we all know, the more stressed you are, the more anxious you are, the more that the brain feels like, oh, okay, this is something really bad that's happening. Because the brain evolved for survival. It did not evolve for us to be happy. And so we've got all of these different kind of factory settings in the brain that will determine what we experience in labor. And to help parents understand that hurt does not automatically equal harm. Sometimes the brain has just got its wires crossed. I mean, when we look at some of the really fascinating research around like phantom limb, or for like women who've had, I think it's 30 to 80% of women who've had a mastectomy still experience pain in their breast. The breast doesn't exist. So the breast doesn't exist, but yet the brain is processing it as it does. So when we look at phantom limb pain, where we've got a situation where the arm doesn't exist physically, but that real estate in the brain is still activated. So there's so much we can do, and there's even what I kind of came across recently, which I thought was fascinating, was that even our attachment style influences our pain perception. So that's kind of takes it off into a whole other direction, because now we're thinking, okay, so how I was raised and the attachment style between myself and my parents, can it influence my pain experience?
I see what you're talking about, though, because if you're kind of codependent, or you're looking for external, then you would probably feel pain a little bit more so that you could exhibit it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and your stress response is heightened as well, because if you're someone who has not a kind of well-developed, healthy attachment, that we tend to see is in those areas associated with stress in the brain, they've got more real estate as well.
And I was thinking, if you're running or you're doing something, you get a muscle cramp, Charlie horse, while you're gardening or whatever, you go, oh, ding, 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 and you stand up, you shake it out or whatever. And that's pain. Your body's warning you that there's, lactic acid buildup in that cramp.
Yeah. You need to do something.
To move. But we don't automatically assume that is dangerous and scary. And we don't get afraid, and that's basically what your uterus is doing when it's a muscle clamping down. If we're teaching it that's just
it's squeezing and releasing. And in there's an incredible researcher that she did biopsies of the uterine tissue, and there are very few nerves in the uterus at full term. So you actually have more in your pre-pregnancy state than you do have in your full term. What you have is an upregulation, like a massive increase of oxytocin receptors, because we want that oxytocin driving those sensations and bringing your baby to you. But it looks like from the evolution of the female body that it's not supposed to be.
Biologically,
painful.
We've got an advantage here.
Yes, yeah. And at full term, we still see those nerve endings in the cervix. But that still doesn't explain why some people are going around, walking around, at 5 centimeters and having a good old time, and someone who's 1 centimeter is really having a very difficult time. So there's lots to explore.
I prepared for all my births, but I still would define what I felt as pain. So I wonder if just I didn't have the right training for me, or if I had trauma that I hadn't resolved, or, but I would still define what I felt as pretty severe pain. But I know biologically it shouldn't have been that severe.
Yeah, and I'm in no way saying that, because there is this perception that anyone who's involved in hypnosis, that you're just going to sneeze your baby out and you don't feel a thing, no. Most women will experience pain in labor. But what can we do to minimize it, and that's part of that understanding of how the uterus works and how the brain interprets those sensations. And there's different ways that, because we have our own endogenous endorphins, our own painkillers, and there's different ways we can access them. So there's 3 different ways we access them. So there's the gate control mechanism, which would be like a TENS machine. So we create this kind of, or a massage, it creates that kind of a tingly, comfortable sensation in the body. And those sensations reach the brain before the sensations that are coming. So it's kind of competing signals. And then we have another mechanism called, it's the acronym is DNIC for short, diffuse, noxious, inhibitory. It's a mouthful. But it's when we create painful stimulus to release endorphins. So that would be similar to the saline injections in the back that we're seeing now. Thankfully, we're starting to get more interest in. So women who have back labor, that if we give them these little bee sting injections in the lower back during labor, which are incredibly painful to get, that it almost stops their back labor almost.
Okay. In a lot of ways, our brains are pretty dumb. Our bodies are pretty dumb. Like they're like a 2-year-old. They're tantruming. You're like, would you like a cupcake? And they're like, woo!
Over here. Yeah. It is totally, because the brain only has limited bandwidth. So
like, I tell my kids if they hurt themselves or whatever, they stub their toe or they take a finger off or whatever, I'm like, well, do you want me to bite the other finger off or do you want me to kick you in the face? And they're like, Mom, that's so stupid. Anyway, but it's the same concept. If you give your body other stimulation, then it can't remember the first one.
Yeah, exactly. And because I use like virtual reality with some clients in labor, and again, it's amazing because the brain cannot process all of this information.
I wonder if you could do virtuality where when the brain processes a surge, it can like lead you through this video game or something. And
yeah, I that's what I do. I have parents play really simple, really like dumb games that just keep them entertained. And like I have this one, like it's a whack-a-mole game, and they're literally going through labor, and it's like, and the surge passes, and it's like, oh, that wasn't too bad. I'm like, okay, well.
So maybe try playing your favorite game during labor.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's probably why singing works.
Instead of Sentinel. Yes.
Yeah, that's probably why singing works, dance works, like a lot of physical activity works. Then is because your brain is then worried about the bandwidth of not falling over or making the right sound or whatever it is, and not so much on the pressures coming from the abdomen.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating.
And then when there was a really big study done in Canada in 2014, and it was the largest meta-analysis of looking at different ways of approaching pain in labor for parents who were planning a physiological birth. And they looked at the gate control theory and TENS machines and water immersion and massage. And they also looked at the DNIC, which was the saline water injections or the holding the comb in your hand, something that was going to create a little bit more kind of painful stimulus. But the third factor that they looked at was central nervous system. So the mental part of it. And what they found, which ended up being a 2018 obstetric guideline in Canada for staff for supporting physiological birth, was they found significantly improved outcomes, not just around pain perception, but less cesareans, less medication use, more positive experiences when they combined the DNIC or gate control theory with the central nervous system, with the brain part of it. So the mindfulness, the hypnosis. So it really needs to be a key part of any childbirth program that you're taking. Train the brain.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So where do they go to download this app?
So they can get it, App Store or Google Play.
Both awesome. And then what's your website and how do they reach out to you if they have any questions directly? Oh, and you are on TikTok too.
Oh, yeah. TikTok is such a great platform. And we need more childbirth educators, doulas, and a lot more midwives on there because I feel like I'm a bit of a lone wolf.
Yep.
There's so
I know
much
I've gotten on there and searched for stuff and I thought, okay, if this is where Generation Z is getting their information and they're starting to be childbearing ages, we're in trouble.
Yes. Yeah. So shout out to everyone who all the other birth professionals, please join me on TikTok.
So Instagram, GentleBirth Official, TikTok @GentleBirth, and Facebook, GentleBirth.
Facebook. Yeah.
And App Store.
App Store, and GentleBirth.com. It's soon to be GentleBirth.app, but you'll find us there.
Yep.
And reach out to me. I'm happy to chat anytime.
Wow. And if you have any questions or want me to connect you with her, you can always reach me at media@birthcircle.com. Thank you so much. I mean, I think we could have gone for another hour. It's fascinating. Fascinating.
You'll have to stop me now.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll do another episode because I just really geek out in science. I love the science behind where you talk about the brain and oh my goodness. And we start talking about music and hormones and yummy stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The juicy stuff.
Yep. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you, Sarah. Good to talk to you.
Please visit us at birthcircle.com, join our Facebook groups, or find us on Instagram and Pinterest. We hope you'll use our resources to support your birthing experience.